which I barely use, Twitter, which I use a lot, blog, which I use a moderate amount. Whatever you're into, like everyone's going to have their own thing that they deploy to tell their story. But I always think about how do I engage this audience, and I think of it a lot like this. I mean, this is when I tweet. This is what I think about what I'm doing right now, and I firmly believe that it's no different. It's just a different medium of telling the same story. So through my tweets, I tell people what I'm telling you one sentence at a time. And sometimes I have links and sometimes I have a hashtag because that's what you do. And on my blog, I tell it 4 paragraphs at a time. But it's all the same big story about what is Mark thinking, what does Mark believe in, who is Mark talking to, where's Mark traveling, right? It's all the same story. So I really believe that people get all hung up in social media and it's tricky and it's different and it's new and it's, yeah, you got to learn it. I mean, it's like anything else. You got to learn how to do it. But then that's the beginning because now you have to, it's like learning how to operate a camera. You know, that doesn't make you a film director, right? You have to, now that you know how to work the camera, now you need to like make the film. And so people asking me about social media, I say, that's like asking Tom Hanks to speak about camera work. Like it's sort of necessary, but not sufficient to telling a good story, right? Just having the equipment and knowing how all the buttons work and knowing how the video editing works in the story, right? So when I think about Twitter or anything else, I think about this kind of thing. You guys are my audience. You have certain backgrounds, certain interests. You're gathered in a place, and I'm on stage performing for you right now, okay? And I think of Twitter, I think of blogging, I think of video, which I'm horrible at, but other people are great. It's all performance. I really, really believe that. And I think if you live in the United States, you'll be here in August. There's a fantastic conference. I'm not involved in it, but I'm going to go again. It's called the Audience Conference, and it basically is all about that. It's a very unique experience. I went last year, really crystallized some of my thoughts on this. So, okay, so now all of a sudden you're on board, right? You're thinking about audience and how to engage that audience. So now you need, before you do the social media, a rough draft of your story. So what is the story that you want to tell? In my case now, I'm thinking a lot about what is the story I want to tell about Microsoft's brand and how that affects public sector businesses or governments. How does it stand for a larger view of public service and public good? And so on. What is that rough draft of the story? What's the big picture? Okay? If you don't have that story, I mean, just don't even bother starting a blog. Don't even bother, with the Facebook fan page. No one's going to care. And I have all these people coming to me, Mark, we got all the social media stuff, right? We got Facebook fan page. We have a Twitter account. We started an education blog. It's just not really taking off. We need to know how to do Facebook better. We need to know how to tweet better. And they want me to come in and sort of do a workshop on how to tweet better. I'm like, yeah, well, it's because you don't have it's the same thing. You don't have the big story, and therefore you don't know how to tell it, right? So what is the story that you want to tell about your organization, or what is the story you want to spread through your network of contacts or whatever? And then there's social media, right? And social media is a mess. This is where, if I had slides, I would show you that classic slide with like 8 billion social media startups, right? And it's like, oh, this is really complicated and no one knows any of these companies. It's true. I mean, there are a lot of social media options out there. I think there are some really big basic ones that everyone should kind of know. And then there's specialized ones. And sometimes you got to dig a little deeper. We are talking about, I'm not sure if it's even public yet, but we're talking about this fitness-related event, let's say, that Microsoft is going to be involved in. And now I'm going to forget the name of it, but I happen to know that my friend Justin has this other social media thing hooked up to Twitter, and what it does is it tracks your running route. And so it keeps track on a website of where you run and what the route is on a map, and then you can look up all your run-ins and get the mileage, time, and everything. And then it automatically tweets it out when he gets back from his run. And so because I know about that, I've never used it, but because I know about it, I'm aware of that potential tool, we might try to work that into this particular engagement. But would I use it for other Microsoft stuff? Well, no, it doesn't make any sense, right? So I think you have to do research and figure out what kind of tools from this arsenal, you have tanks and planes and handguns and swords, and grenades and whatever in this arsenal, you don't deploy all your tools. And you don't just deploy one tool for any, mission, right? So the same as social media. So you might, video might be good for one thing, like doing software demos, that works pretty well on video. Another thing, maybe about stories about community engagement and kids' education. Maybe that's more 1,000-word blog, like whatever it is. Social media is not that important. It's just a toolbox, right? So you got to know how to use the tools, but then more importantly, I think, than actually knowing how to use them is figuring out how to innovatively put a few of them together into some kind of, I don't know.
Integrated communication.
Yeah, thank you. Into an integrated tool set that works together to achieve something that you want to achieve. So, lastly, and I want to take questions and hang out for a while and just have a conversation. I think you have to figure out now, if you actually do all this successfully, right, you might be a victim of your own success. So let's say you perfectly understand the audience and you have a great story, and then you figure out a great way to do social media and maybe traditional media or other things, and now you're telling that story, and now you've got people really, really excited about your story, and they want to do more. You need to be prepared for that, right? So are you prepared to actually activate people? And I don't think many people are, or brands are, or governments are. So first of all, I think many people don't think about activating people, but I think that's the most important thing, because you want people out there telling your story independent of you. You want the story to live on beyond what you did and get people involved in whatever. And hopefully you have a little piece of that somehow. So you have an audience, right? But only a subset of that audience will become activated. Even if you're wildly successful, not everyone will activate, right? We're talking about a small number, 5%, 1%, whatever. So who do you ideally want to activate? Think ahead about it a little bit. And then if you do activate them, what do you want to do with them? So, we were talking about this fitness-related event, this vague thing I'm talking about, so I don't think it's necessarily public. But if we activated people related to this event, what would I do with them? Well, maybe it's teenagers texting each other about, staying fit or something and reducing childhood obesity. I don't know. But maybe it's something like that that's actually valuable for a community. It's interesting. Maybe it's a real news story. Maybe it's just a good thing that's going on, whatever. But that's one thing I thought about doing, were we to activate people around this thing that we're doing for a philanthropy. I think a lot of times people don't think that through. I know that the U.S. federal government very rarely, what's up?
We got 5 minutes.
5 minutes left? All right. Before questions. Oh, okay. That's fine. Very rarely thinks about activating citizens to do stuff. I think that sometimes they put in a good effort, but I think rarely do they really get into community. So I know this guy, Yossi, and Yossi worked on the Obama campaign, and he's he's very cool. He's got a beard and he wears hats, and he's a very neat guy, Yossi Sargent. And I forget what his exact title was, but he was activating community guy, worked on the web team, whatever. And what he used to do, you hear about Obama and he used